They're calling the FBI? Over a puppy? What in the world did I just get myself into? My name is Sarah Collins. I'm a small-town kindergarten teacher, and the most excitement I usually get in a day is when one of my students decides finger paint is best used on their face instead of paper. I never expected to be standing in the middle of my town's only veterinary clinic, holding a trembling golden retriever puppy, while a serious-looking technician dialed a number on the clinic's landline with a look of urgency. It all started on a chilly autumn afternoon. I was walking home from school, my arms full of papers I needed to grade, when I noticed the little guy trailing behind me. His fur was a rich golden color, his eyes deep pools of brown, and his tail wagged so enthusiastically it looked like his whole back end might lift off the ground. At first I thought he belonged to someone in the neighborhood. Maybe he'd slipped out of a yard. But there was no collar, no sign of hesitation. Just a little pup determined to follow me home. I knelt down, and he bounded toward me, placing his front paws on my knee like we were old friends. His wet nose nudged my hand, and I couldn't help but laugh. "Well, aren't you friendly? Do you have a home, buddy?" I glanced up and down the street, expecting someone to come running, calling his name, but the road was quiet. The houses lining the street had their front doors shut. The sounds of distant televisions or faint conversations, the only noise. No one seemed to be looking for him. I sighed. "Guess you're coming with me." The moment I stepped inside my house, he darted in after me like he'd lived there forever. He sniffed around, inspected my couch, and wagged his tail at the smell of my dinner still sitting on the counter. I laughed again and shook my head. "You act like you belong here." He curled up at my feet as I ate, letting out a content sigh. It wasn't until later that night, as I watched him doze on my living room rug, that I knew I had to do the responsible thing and take him to the vet the next morning. He was clean, well-fed, and clearly socialized. Someone had to be looking for him. I owed it to his owner to get him back home. The next morning, we walked into the clinic, and the receptionist, a kind woman named Linda, greeted me with a warm smile. "And who's this handsome fella?" "That's what I'm trying to find out," I said, scratching the puppy behind the ears. "He followed me home yesterday. I figured I should bring him in to check for a microchip." Linda nodded and motioned for one of the vet technicians, a man in his late 40s with a graying beard named Dr. Mitchell. He gently took the puppy from me and scanned his shoulder with the microchip reader. A few beeps later, the scanner picked up something. "Looks like we've got a chip," Dr. Mitchell said, peering at the screen. "Let's see who he belongs to." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that he had a home. Sadness because in just one night I had already grown attached to him. I knew I couldn't keep him, but a small part of me had hoped there was no chip, so I could at least have a reason to take care of him a little longer. Dr. Mitchell's expression shifted. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard as he pulled up the information connected to the chip. His brows furrowed. Then, his face went pale. Linda," he said, glancing at the receptionist. "Can you come look at this?" Linda peered over his shoulder, and whatever she saw made her inhale sharply. "Is this?" Dr. Mitchell nodded and turned back to me. "Sarah, I need to make a phone call." "Is something wrong?" I asked, my stomach twisting with uncertainty. He didn't answer right away. He picked up the phone and dialed a number from a sticky note beside his computer. He spoke in hushed tones, and I could only make out a few words, enough to know that this wasn't an ordinary lost pet case. Finally, he hung up and turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite place. "The FBI is on their way." My heart nearly stopped. "The FBI? What? Why?" Dr. Mitchell hesitated. "I can't say much, but This puppy's chip is linked to a classified case. I blinked. You're telling me I just brought home a top-secret puppy? Linda tried to smile, but it was tight, forced. We just need to wait for them to arrive. I promise, you're not in trouble. But this little guy, he's not an ordinary dog. I looked down at the puppy, who was still wagging his tail like none of this was a big deal. He licked my hand, his tongue warm and comforting, like he could sense my sudden anxiety. Then the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. I wasn't sure what I had gotten myself into, but one thing was clear. This puppy had just turned my quiet, predictable life upside down. The sirens grew louder, and within moments, the reflection of flashing red and blue lights filled the clinic's front window. I swallowed hard, feeling my heart pound as two black SUVs skidded to a stop outside. A group of men in dark suits stepped out, their movements swift and purposeful. It was the kind of scene you only saw in movies. I felt frozen in place as the front door swung open and two agents entered, their expressions unreadable. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, his hands raised slightly in what seemed like an attempt to show he wasn't a threat. "You're looking for the dog?" he asked, his voice calm but careful. The taller of the two agents nodded. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm Special Agent Carter. This is Special Agent Reynolds. We need to see the dog immediately." I instinctively pulled the puppy closer to me, and he let out a soft whimper. His little body was warm against my arms, and even though I had only known him for a day, I felt an overwhelming need to protect him. "Can someone tell me what's going on?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around me. Agent Carter exchanged a glance with his partner, then looked at me. "Ma'am, we appreciate your cooperation, but we can't disclose all the details. Just know that this dog is part of an ongoing investigation." Dr. Mitchell folded his arms. The chip was registered under a government code. That's all we could see before I called. Agent Reynolds nodded. "That's correct. This dog was part of a high-security program, and its disappearance months ago was classified. We weren't sure we'd ever locate it." I frowned, looking down at the golden retriever, who was now licking my fingers as if none of this mattered to him. "You're telling me this little guy is some kind of secret agent dog?" Reynolds let out a breath, almost amused. "Not quite, but he's valuable, and we need to take him in immediately." Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. "You mean, take him away? Just like that?" "It's not safe for him to be here," Carter said. "And it's not safe for you either." The weight of that sentence hit me like a brick. I wasn't just some bystander who found a lost dog. I had unknowingly stumbled into something much bigger. But the thought of just handing over this puppy didn't sit right with me. "What happens to him once you take him?" Carter hesitated. "That's classified." I shook my head. "That's not good enough. He trusts me. He followed me home. And now you want to rip him away without telling me why? How do I know he's not in danger with you?" The agents exchanged another glance. I could tell I was pushing a boundary, but I didn't care. The puppy nuzzled against me, his tail thumping softly against my arm. He wasn't just some classified project. He was a living, breathing creature who deserved better than being shuffled around like a piece of lost property. Dr. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Sarah has a point. If the dog was missing for months, what exactly was he running from?" Reynolds shifted on his feet. "That information is not public. What matters is that we have him now." The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of the agent's stares pressing down on me, but I refused to budge. "I want answers before I let you take him." Carter sighed, rubbing his temple as if debating how much to say. Finally, he relented. This dog was part of a government research program focused on advanced canine intelligence. He was trained to recognize threats, detect certain signals, and respond to specific commands. But something went wrong. He disappeared from the facility 6 months ago without a trace. We've been looking for him ever since. I stared at them, stunned. You're telling me he escaped? On his own? Reynolds nodded. That's what we believe. And we need to understand how. I glanced down at the golden retriever, who now looked up at me with big, trusting eyes. This little guy had outsmarted a government facility and managed to stay hidden for half a year? That was more than impressive. But if he escaped, did that mean he was running from something dangerous? And you're sure you're not here to... I hesitated, looking at the agents. To put him down or something? Carter shook his head immediately. No, we need him alive. He may have information that could help us understand security risks we weren't aware of. That only raised more questions. Security risks? You mean people are looking for him? Dangerous people? Reynolds hesitated. We don't know how much of a target he is, but he shouldn't be in public. If the wrong people realize he's been found, it could lead to complications. A chill ran down my spine. I had brought this puppy home thinking he was just lost, but now I was realizing he might be in real danger. And if he was in danger, that meant I was too. But there was something in me that refused to let go of him just yet. If you need to study him, let me help, I said quickly. He trusts me. If you take him away now, he might shut down. Let me stay with him. I'll cooperate. Reynolds frowned. That's not standard procedure. Carter exhaled sharply. It's risky. And it's the best chance you have, Dr. Mitchell interjected. She's right. If the dog has bonded with her, taking him by force could be counterproductive. The agents were silent for a moment before Carter finally spoke. All right, you come with us. But you follow our orders, no exceptions. A mix of nerves and relief settled in my stomach. Deal. I had no idea what I had just agreed to, but one thing was certain. My life had just changed forever. I barely had time to process what was happening before we were shuffled into one of the black SUVs. The agents took positions, Carter driving with Reynolds in the passenger seat, while another agent I hadn't been introduced to sat beside me in the back. The puppy was curled in my lap, breathing softly, completely unaware of the gravity of the situation. I held on to him a little tighter, watching as the town I'd known my whole life faded behind us. The quiet streets, the friendly houses, the predictable rhythm of my days, all of it was slipping away, replaced by an uncertain future I never saw coming. I turned toward Carter. Where are we going? He kept his eyes on the road. A secure facility, somewhere safe. That doesn't answer my question. Reynolds turned slightly in his seat. For now, it's better if you don't know the location. Security reasons. My stomach twisted. So I'm just supposed to go along with this blindly? You agreed to cooperate, Carter said, his voice steady but firm. We're holding up our end of the deal by letting you stay with the dog. But you need to trust us. Trust them? That was asking a lot, considering I'd just found out this puppy wasn't an ordinary stray, but something connected to the FBI. I looked down at the little guy, his soft golden fur warm against my hands. He trusted me, and that was all I needed to know for now. The drive stretched on. We left the town, passing through open highways, forests, and areas so remote I doubted they even had names. Every so often I'd glance at the agents, trying to read their expressions, but they gave nothing away. The silence became unbearable, so I finally spoke. What's his name? Reynolds turned toward me. What? The dog. He must have a name, right? Carter sighed. Officially, he's designated as Project Orion. I blinked. Project Orion? That's not a name, that's a mission. Reynolds offered a small shrug. That's how he was registered. I glanced down at the puppy, running my fingers over his soft ears. That's ridiculous. He needs a real name. The puppy let out a little yawn, and a name popped into my head before I could second-guess it. How about Buddy? Reynolds chuckled. You're renaming a government-classified dog? I lifted my chin. Well, Project Orion doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. He looks like a buddy to me. The puppy gave a small, happy bark, almost like he agreed. Carter remained silent, his fingers tight on the wheel, but he didn't object. That was enough for me. The drive lasted nearly 2 hours before we finally reached a heavily secured compound. Tall fences loomed ahead, reinforced with barbed wire, cameras positioned at every corner. The moment we pulled up, uniformed guards approached, scanning the vehicle before allowing us through the gate. My pulse quickened. Once inside, I was escorted through a series of hallways, Buddy still nestled in my arms. The facility was stark and cold, all sharp angles and fluorescent lights. It didn't feel like a place where a dog, classified or not, belonged. I was led to a small, plain room with a simple table and chairs. Carter gestured for me to sit. We need to run a few tests on him. My grip on Buddy tightened. Tests? Reynolds sat across from me. Nothing harmful. We just need to understand what he remembers, what he was trained for. I hesitated before nodding slowly. Fine, but I'm staying with him. Carter didn't argue. Instead, he pressed a button on the table, and a team of researchers entered, setting up equipment. A woman in a white lab coat approached cautiously, giving me a small smile. Hi, Sarah. My name is Dr. Lawson. I promise, we'll be gentle. I nodded, watching as she knelt in front of Buddy, letting him sniff her hand before she took out a small device. She scanned his microchip, the same way Dr. Mitchell had, but instead of pulling up a basic ID, a series of complex codes and encrypted data scrolled across the screen. Lawson frowned. Interesting. What is it? I asked. She exchanged a glance with one of her colleagues before responding. His chip has additional security layers. It looks like there's hidden data. Carter and Reynolds stepped closer. Can you access it? Carter asked. Lawson adjusted her glasses. I'll need time, but whatever's on here, it's not standard. I glanced down at Buddy, who was wagging his tail, completely unfazed. What kind of secrets was he carrying? Over the next few hours, the team ran non-invasive tests, measuring his responses to commands, sounds, and various objects. Some commands he obeyed instantly, others he ignored entirely. It was clear he had advanced training, but there were gaps, like parts of his memory had been wiped or overwritten. Eventually, the testing slowed, and Reynolds turned to me. We're setting you up with temporary quarters here. You'll be safe, and you can stay with Buddy. I crossed my arms. For how long? Carter hesitated. Until we know more. That wasn't the answer I wanted, but at least they weren't taking Buddy away from me. For now. That night, as I sat on the small cot in the room they'd given me, Buddy curled up beside me, his body warm against my side. I ran my fingers through his fur, staring at the ceiling. My quiet, normal life felt like a distant memory. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Buddy and I were in this together, and I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. The morning came too soon. I woke to the sterile scent of the facility and the hum of unseen machinery in the walls. Buddy was still curled up beside me, his small body warm and steady, as if this cold, unfamiliar place meant nothing to him. I envied his calmness. A knock on the door jolted me awake completely. Before I could respond, it opened, and Carter stepped inside. He looked as composed as ever, but there was something else there, something that told me the situation had shifted overnight. "Get dressed," he said. "There's something you need to see." I sat up, blinking. "What happened?" "We accessed part of the chip's hidden data," he replied, "and it raises more questions than answers." My stomach tightened. "Like what?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "It's easier if we show you." I glanced at Buddy, who yawned and stretched before hopping off the bed. If he sensed any danger, he wasn't showing it. I wished I could say the same for myself. Minutes later, I followed Carter down the hallway, Buddy trotting at my side. The facility was even larger than I'd first realized, filled with corridors that all looked the same. I had no idea how anyone found their way around. Eventually, we reached a lab filled with monitors, researchers typing furiously at their stations. Reynolds was already inside, along with Dr. Lawson. She gave me a quick nod before gesturing toward one of the screens. "This is what we pulled from the chip," she said. The screen flickered, displaying a stream of code interspersed with what looked like surveillance footage. The images moved too fast for me to catch any details, but then Lawson slowed it down, pausing on a particular frame. My breath caught in my throat. It was a darkened room, lit only by the glow of a few monitors. And in the center of the frame was Buddy, or at least a younger version of him. He was sitting obediently at someone's feet. The man standing above him had his back turned, but something about his posture sent a chill down my spine. He wasn't just a trainer. He was someone important. "Who is that?" I asked. Carter exhaled slowly. "That's what we're trying to figure out." Reynolds crossed his arms. "We ran the footage through our facial recognition software, but there's no match in any government database. Either this guy doesn't officially exist, or he's someone with access to top-level clearance." I turned back to the screen, studying the scene. Buddy's body language was relaxed, but his eyes were locked onto the man with intense focus. He knew him, trusted him. If Buddy was trained by this man, why would he run? I asked. Lawson sighed. "That's the missing piece. From what we've gathered, Buddy wasn't just part of an intelligence program. He was being conditioned for something specific. But then he vanished. Either he escaped, or someone took him and let him go." I knelt beside Buddy, running a hand through his fur. "So what now?" Carter exchanged a glance with Reynolds. "We need more information, and the only way to get it is to test Buddy's responses further. If we can unlock more of his training, we might be able to figure out who trained him, and why." I looked at Buddy again, the weight of their words settling heavily on my shoulders. He had already been through so much. Would pushing him further bring back memories that were better left buried? As if sensing my hesitation, Buddy licked my hand and wagged his tail. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like reassurance. He wasn't afraid. Maybe I shouldn't be either. "All right," I said. "What do we need to do?" Lawson led us to another part of the lab, where a series of obstacle courses had been set up. It reminded me of military training exercises, with tunnels, walls, and targets spread throughout. Buddy sat beside me, his ears twitching as he took in the setup. "We're going to run some drills," Lawson explained. "We'll issue commands in different ways to see which ones he responds to instinctively." Carter leaned in slightly. "And we'll be watching his reactions carefully. If any of these commands trigger something deeper, we'll know we're on the right track." I nodded, stepping back as Lawson took her place. "Buddy," she called. "Heel." He hesitated for only a fraction of a second before moving to her side, his posture stiff, controlled. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, and I knew immediately this wasn't normal obedience training. He had been taught this in a different way. Lawson continued, issuing commands in rapid succession. Some were standard, sit, stay, roll over, but others were more complex. "Buddy, alert!" The moment she said it, Buddy tensed, his ears standing straight. He turned his head slightly, as if scanning the room. The hair on my arms stood up. "Buddy, track." This time he sniffed the air, his body lowering slightly as if preparing to move. But then something strange happened. He stopped. He turned back to me. And then he whined. The room fell silent. "What just happened?" I asked. Lawson frowned. "It's like he recognized something. Or someone." Carter looked at me. "Sarah, come stand in the center of the room." I hesitated, then stepped forward. Buddy's eyes locked onto me, his tail wagging slightly, but there was something else there too. He wasn't just looking at me. He was waiting, expecting something. Lawson turned back to her notes. "Try saying a command. Anything you think might work." I took a deep breath, my mind scrambling. Then, without knowing why, I spoke. "Buddy, stand down." The second the words left my mouth, he reacted. He lowered himself, ears relaxed, body completely still. It was obedience, but not just any obedience. It was discipline. He had done this before. The weight of what I had just uncovered sent a shiver through me. "Sarah," Carter said slowly, "where did you learn that command?" I swallowed. I didn't. No one spoke. Buddy remained still, his eyes locked onto mine, waiting. And for the first time, I realized he hadn't just chosen me at random. Somehow, for some reason, Buddy had known me all along. The silence stretched between us, thick with unanswered questions. My heart pounded as Buddy remained in his position, still and waiting. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. He hadn't just responded to my command, he had responded as if he had been waiting for it. Carter was the first to break the silence. "Sarah, you need to think carefully. Have you ever trained a dog before? Ever used commands like that?" I shook my head. "No, never." Reynolds studied me with sharp eyes. "Then why did you say it? Why those exact words?" "I don't know," I admitted. "It just felt right." Lawson flipped through her notes, muttering under her breath. "That's not random. Muscle memory is one thing, but verbal recall on an unconscious level? That's different." I knelt beside Buddy, placing a gentle hand on his back. His breathing was steady, but there was something expectant in his posture, as if he was waiting for my next move. My fingers curled in his fur. "He knows me," I murmured. "He's known me this whole time." Carter exchanged a glance with Reynolds before turning to me. "Sarah, you need to tell us everything you remember about the past few years. Any unusual events, any strange encounters, anything that stands out." I frowned, racking my brain for any moments that might explain this bizarre connection. But nothing out of the ordinary stood out. I had lived a simple life, teaching, going about my routine, never once entangling myself with anything remotely close to an FBI investigation. "I don't know what to tell you," I said honestly. "Until Buddy followed me home, my life was completely normal." Lawson tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Unless..." She trailed off, then shook her head. "No, that's impossible." "What?" I pressed. She hesitated, Unless his training included imprinting? Reynolds's expression darkened. That program was shut down years ago. I looked between them. Imprinting? What does that mean? Lawson sighed. It's an experimental training method that was explored in specialized K9 units. The idea was to create a deep, instinctual bond between the handler and the dog, so deep that the dog would respond to them even if they had no recollection of the training. But it was considered unreliable and ethically questionable. The program was discontinued. My pulse raced. But if Buddy was part of it, Reynolds folded his arms, then someone made sure you were a part of it too. A chill ran down my spine. The implications were too big, too terrifying to process. I had no memory of being involved in anything like this, but Buddy's response didn't lie. He knew me, which meant at some point in my life, I had known him too. Carter's jaw tightened. We need to dig deeper. Sarah, we need access to your medical records, any travel history, anything that could give us a lead. I swallowed hard. And if we find something? Then we'll have more answers, Carter said. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find out who trained Buddy, and why they wanted him to find you. I looked down at Buddy, his golden eyes steady and trusting. Whatever had happened in the past, it had led him back to me, and I wasn't about to let him down. Hours later, I sat alone in a small, windowless office while Carter and his team worked to retrieve whatever records they could find on me. I couldn't shake the unease that had settled deep in my bones. If Buddy had been trained to find me, that meant someone had set this in motion a long time ago. I glanced down at him. What are you trying to tell me, Buddy? He tilted his head slightly before resting it on my lap, his warm presence grounding me. I ran my fingers through his fur, trying to recall anything. Any moment from my past that might explain why a top-secret government-trained dog had been sent to me. Nothing came. The door opened, and Carter stepped in, his face unreadable. We found something. I sat up straighter. What is it? He hesitated. It's unusual. He handed me a file. Your records show a gap. A 6-month period where there's no official record of your movements. No transactions, no medical visits. Nothing. My hands tightened around the folder. That's impossible. I've never disappeared. Maybe you don't remember, Reynolds said, entering behind Carter. But the records don't lie. I flipped through the papers, my stomach twisting. The blank spot on my history stared back at me, a void in my own life. I knew where I'd been, or at least I thought I did. Teaching, working, going about my daily routine. But if there was no record, I swallowed hard. What if someone erased it? Carter nodded. That's what we're thinking. And if that's the case, whoever trained Buddy didn't just train him to find you. They trained you to forget. The room spun slightly. Buddy whined, sensing my distress, and nuzzled against my arm. I focused on his warmth, trying to steady my breathing. If my memory had been altered, then what else had been done to me? Reynolds exhaled sharply. We need to get to the bottom of this fast. If someone out there went to the trouble of erasing part of Sarah's past, they're not going to be happy that we're digging it up. Lawson entered, holding another file. And there's more. The encryption on Buddy's chip. It matches the same type used in deep black military operations. Whatever program he was part of, it was off the books. Carter turned to me. Sarah, we need to move you. Now. If someone realizes we're onto this, they might come looking for you. And we don't know what they'll do when they find out you remember nothing. A shiver ran down my spine. This was bigger than I ever could have imagined. I had thought I was just an ordinary person living a normal life. But now, staring at the evidence before me, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I looked down at Buddy. He had found me for a reason, and if someone was coming for us, I needed to be ready. We left the facility in a convoy of unmarked SUVs. Carter, Reynolds, and Lawson had made the arrangements quickly, their urgency giving me no time to argue. As we drove down the darkened road, my pulse pounded in my ears. Buddy lay in my lap, his breathing steady, his warm weight a comfort. I glanced out the window. No landmarks, no signs, just the stretch of highway cutting through the night. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. Carter sat beside me in the back, arms folded. "Somewhere secure. We need to keep you off the radar until we figure out who's behind all this." Reynolds, in the passenger seat, didn't turn around. "We're working on tracking down who erased your records, but if they're good enough to wipe 6 months of your life, they won't stop just because we found a few breadcrumbs." I swallowed hard. "And what if they find us first?" Reynolds exhaled. "That's what we're trying to prevent." The road stretched on in tense silence. The weight of it all pressed down on me. Someone had altered my life, erased parts of it, and trained a dog to find me. But why? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Buddy shifted, lifting his head to nuzzle my arm. He was still calm, still trusting. Whatever this was, I wasn't in it alone. After nearly 2 hours, the SUVs slowed. We turned off the main road, following a dirt path through thick trees. The headlights bounced over dense forest until finally, a small, dark structure appeared. A cabin. "This is it?" I asked as we pulled up. "For now," Carter said. "It's off the grid, stocked with supplies. No one should be able to trace you here." I stepped out, Buddy trotting at my side. The air was cool, thick with the scent of pine. It was eerily quiet. Reynolds and Carter carried in supplies, while Lawson checked the perimeter. Inside, the cabin was simple. A main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms. It looked lived in, but only just. "Who owns this place?" I asked, setting my bag down. Carter hesitated. "A retired operative, someone we trust." Which meant someone dangerous. Someone who had lived a life I didn't want to think about. Buddy sniffed the room, then settled near the fireplace. I followed him, lowering myself to the floor beside him. "What now?" Reynolds checked his phone. "Now we dig. We're running facial recognition on everyone in that surveillance footage. We're cross-checking classified files against your name. If there's a connection, we'll find it." Carter sat on the arm of a chair. "And in the meantime, you stay here. No outside contact. No signals, in or out." "So I'm just supposed to sit here and wait?" "Yes," Carter said bluntly. "Until we know more, you and Buddy are safest here." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. This still doesn't make sense. Why would someone erase 6 months of my life? What could I possibly know that's worth this kind of cover-up? Reynolds leaned against the doorframe. "That's what we're trying to find out, and the fact that we don't have answers yet is what makes this so dangerous." I stared into the fire, feeling the weight of their words settle in my chest. None of this made sense. But someone, somewhere, had set all of this in motion, and now, whether I wanted to or not, I was at the center of it. Hours passed. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't settle. I ended up pacing the cabin, my thoughts spinning. At some point, I wandered outside, Buddy following close. The night air was crisp, the sky a blanket of stars. The quiet was almost too perfect. Buddy tensed. A low growl rumbled from his throat. My pulse spiked. "What is it, boy?" He didn't move, just stared into the darkness beyond the trees. I strained my eyes, trying to see what had set him off. Nothing. Just shadows. Then a twig snapped. I backed up toward the cabin. "Buddy, inside." He didn't move. His ears twitched, muscles tense. I turned, reaching for the door, but before I could step inside, the air shifted. Something moved in the trees. "Sarah, inside now!" Carter's voice cut through the silence as the door swung open behind me. I didn't argue. I grabbed Buddy's collar, pulling him inside as Carter and Reynolds stepped past me, weapons drawn. The door slammed shut. The room felt smaller, the tension thick. "What did you see?" Reynolds asked, eyes sharp. I shook my head. "I don't know. Buddy heard something. I saw movement. Could be an animal." Carter wasn't convinced. He moved to the window, scanning the tree line. "Stay inside. Lights off." Lawson moved to the monitors, checking the security feed. Nothing showed. But Buddy didn't relax. He sat by the door, ears up, eyes locked on something unseen. Something was out there. Watching. I exhaled slowly. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. And we were no longer alone. The tension in the cabin was suffocating. Carter and Reynolds remained stationed near the windows, their eyes scanning the darkness beyond the tree line. Lawson was hunched over the security monitors, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she tried to pick up any movement. Buddy hadn't moved from the door. His body was tense, ears perked, gaze fixed outside. I sat on the couch, gripping the armrest so tightly my knuckles turned white. My breathing was shallow, my heartbeat erratic. The logical part of me told me it could have been an animal, a deer, maybe even a bear. But deep down, I knew better. Something was watching us. Something, or someone, had found us. Minutes passed, then an hour. No one spoke. No one moved unnecessarily. It was as if we were waiting for something inevitable to happen. Finally, Carter exhaled sharply and turned away from the window. "We need to move," he said. His voice was calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. "This place isn't secure anymore." Reynolds nodded. "Agreed. If someone followed us, they know we're here. We can't afford to sit and wait for them to make the next move." I felt my stomach drop. "Where will we go?" Carter's gaze flickered to me. "We have another safe house, more secure, harder to trace. But we need to leave now." Lawson quickly shut down the monitors and gathered her gear. "I'll pull whatever security footage we have, but if whoever's out there is careful, they'll know how to avoid cameras." Buddy whined softly and looked up at me. I ran my fingers through his fur, trying to calm my nerves. "What if they come before we leave?" Reynolds gave me a sharp look. "Then we fight." The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. The matter-of-factness of it. The certainty. Carter didn't waste any time. He grabbed a duffel bag from the corner, tossed it over his shoulder, and motioned for me to follow. "We take only what we need. We leave the cars and head through the forest. There's a second vehicle about a mile out, far enough that it shouldn't be compromised." I hesitated for only a second before I followed him. My mind was spinning, but my body moved on instinct. If I stopped to think about what was happening, about what we were running from, I wasn't sure I'd be able to keep going. Reynolds and Lawson led the way, their weapons drawn, and their eyes scanning the trees. Carter was close behind me, Buddy trotting silently at my side. The night air was crisp, and the forest was eerily quiet. Too quiet. We walked in tense silence, the only sounds coming from the occasional rustle of leaves beneath our feet. My adrenaline was spiking, making me hyper-aware of every movement, every shadow that flickered between the trees. Every step forward felt like a step deeper into something I wasn't sure I could handle. Then Buddy stopped. I nearly tripped over him. He had planted himself firmly in place, his ears twitching, his nose lifting slightly as if catching a scent. His tail was stiff, his body alert. Reynolds turned. "What is it?" Buddy let out a low growl. My pulse skyrocketed. I turned to Carter, panic rising in my throat. "He senses something." Reynolds and Lawson immediately shifted, scanning the area with renewed focus. The forest still looked empty, but I trusted Buddy. If he was reacting, it meant we weren't alone. Then, without warning, a branch snapped to our left. Everything happened in a blur. Reynolds grabbed my arm and shoved me behind him, his gun aimed toward the sound. Carter and Lawson fell into defensive positions. Buddy let out a sharp bark, his body poised to attack. The tension stretched as we waited, breathless for something, anything to happen. Then a voice broke the silence. "Put the guns down." It was deep, steady, and close. Too close. I felt a chill shoot down my spine. Whoever they were, they had gotten close without us realizing. That meant they were trained, skilled. Carter didn't lower his weapon. "Step out. Hands where we can see them." A moment passed. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. He was tall, dressed in dark tactical gear, his hands raised, but his posture completely unfazed. His face was partially obscured by the darkness, but I could see the sharpness of his features, the cool, calculated look in his eyes. "You're making a mistake," he said, his gaze flicking to me. "I'm not your enemy." Reynolds tightened his grip on his gun. "Funny, because you sure as hell aren't a friend." The man's gaze didn't waver. "I'm here for the girl." My stomach twisted violently. "Me?" Buddy growled beside me, his entire body tense. He knew this man. I could feel it. Carter's voice was dangerously low. "You're not taking her." The man exhaled slowly, almost as if he had expected the reaction. "You don't understand. She's not who she thinks she is." My breath caught. "What?" His eyes locked onto mine. "You don't remember, do you?" Something about the way he said it sent my mind spiraling. The missing 6 months. The erased records. The connection to Buddy. I took a shaky step back. "What do you know?" The man lowered his hands slightly. "I was there when it all started." A cold dread washed over me. Carter stepped closer, his voice sharp. "If you know something, start talking. Fast." The man studied me, then glanced down at Buddy. "I can tell you everything," he said, "but if you come with me, there's no going back." Silence fell over the group. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Carter tightened his jaw. "Not happening." The man met my gaze again. "It's your choice." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Everything in me screamed, not to trust him, but something deeper, something I couldn't explain, was pulling me toward him. He knew something about my past, something no one else could tell me, and I wasn't sure I could walk away without knowing the truth. My mind was spinning. The man before me, whoever he was, knew something. Something about me, about Buddy, about the 6 months of my life that had been wiped clean. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my response. Carter and Reynolds were on edge, their weapons still drawn, and I knew they wouldn't hesitate to fire if they thought this man was a threat. But something in me was telling me to listen. Buddy hadn't lunged. He hadn't growled like he had when he sensed danger before. He was alert, but not aggressive. That had to mean something. I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The man's expression remained neutral, but his eyes flickered with something. Recognition. maybe even regret. You already know me. You just don't remember. A cold chill ran down my spine. I glanced at Carter, who was shaking his head, his grip on his gun tightening. Sarah, don't listen to him. We don't know who he is or what he wants. The man ignored him, his gaze never leaving mine. I was part of the same program as Buddy. And you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? He took a careful step forward, hands still raised. You weren't just a bystander, Sarah. You were part of this. You trained with Buddy. You were meant to be his handler, but something happened. Something they didn't want you to remember. I couldn't breathe. My entire body felt frozen, locked in place by the weight of his words. I had trained Buddy? I had been part of whatever this was? My memories told me that was impossible, but my memories weren't whole, were they? Carter took a step in front of me, his voice hard as steel. You're lying. The man didn't flinch. Am I? Reynolds, who had been silent this entire time, suddenly spoke. Let's say you're telling the truth. Why wipe her memory? Why go through all the trouble of erasing 6 months of her life? The man exhaled, his jaw tightening. Because she knew something dangerous, and she chose to forget. My knees felt weak. I had chosen this? No, that didn't make sense. Why would I willingly erase my own memories? And if I had, why was Buddy here now? Why had he found me? Then why did Buddy come back to me? I asked, my voice shaking. If I erased everything, why would he still know me? The man's expression softened slightly. Because the bond you two had. It was stronger than any programming, any conditioning. He was always going to find you, and you were always going to remember. Carter wasn't buying it. That's enough. We're leaving. The man's posture tensed. If you leave now, you won't get the answers you're looking for. Sarah deserves to know the truth. I clenched my fists, my mind warring with itself. The logical part of me said to go with Carter, to leave this behind and never look back. But the part of me that had been questioning everything, that had felt the missing pieces in my mind like phantom pains, needed to stay, needed to hear what this man had to say. Buddy nudged my leg, his warm weight grounding me. I looked down at him, at those familiar golden eyes, and something inside me cracked. I took a deep breath. Tell me everything. Carter cursed under his breath, but I ignored him. The man studied me for a long moment, as if assessing how much he should say. Then he nodded. You were recruited into an off-the-books intelligence program 3 years ago, he said. It wasn't sanctioned by any official agency. It was experimental, covert. The goal was to create a perfect handler-operative duo, a human and canine team that could work together seamlessly, react faster than any normal unit, anticipate threats before they happened. My hands were shaking. I had been recruited into something like that? No. I had been a teacher, living an ordinary life. This didn't make sense. But the man wasn't done. You and Buddy were one of the most successful pairs. You worked together for over a year. You were trained to read each other's signals, move as one. But then you discovered something about the program. Something you weren't supposed to know. What was it? I whispered. His jaw tightened. I don't know. But whatever it was, it made you run. And before you disappeared, you wiped your own memory to protect yourself. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I shook my head. No, that's impossible. Is it? He asked. Haven't you felt it? The way certain things feel familiar when they shouldn't? The instincts you have without understanding why. I thought about the commands that had come so easily, the way my body reacted before my mind even caught up. I thought about how Buddy had known me, how I had known him without realizing it. Carter stepped in again, his voice low with warning. Sarah, this could be a setup. He could be feeding you just enough truth to manipulate you. But I could see it in the man's eyes. He wasn't lying. At least not about everything. I turned to him again. And you? Who are you in all of this? He hesitated. I was in the program too. I trained with you. A flash of something hit me, an image I couldn't hold on to, a shadow of a memory just out of reach. I gasped, gripping the side of my head as dizziness washed over me. Buddy let out a whimper, pressing himself against my side. You're remembering, aren't you? The man asked softly. I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling, tiny fragments of something just out of reach flickering like static on a broken screen. I could almost hear a voice calling my name. I could almost feel the weight of a gun in my hand. I squeezed my eyes shut. I don't know. I don't know what's real. The man took a slow step closer. Then let me help you find out. Carter raised his gun again. Not happening. The man didn't back down. You can run again. Hide, keep pretending, but they will find you, and this time you won't get another chance. My throat was dry. I looked at Carter, at Reynolds, at Lawson. They had helped me, protected me, but they didn't have the answers. This man did. I exhaled shakily. I need to know. Carter clenched his jaw. Sarah, I'm going. Silence. Then Carter lowered his weapon, resignation in his eyes. Then we're going with you. I turned back to the man, heart pounding. Where do we start? He met my gaze, his expression unreadable. We go back to where it all began. The drive was long and silent. The weight of everything I had just learned pressed heavily on my chest. I kept my gaze on the road ahead, trying to process it all. The man sitting in the passenger seat, who still hadn't given me his name, claimed he had known me, trained with me. And yet there was still nothing in my mind that confirmed it. The pieces weren't falling into place the way I wanted them to. But Buddy knew him. That much was clear. Carter was behind the wheel, his grip on the steering wheel tight. Reynolds sat next to him, scanning the road like he expected an ambush at any moment. Lawson had her laptop open, the screen casting a faint glow against her face as she worked on something I couldn't see. I sat in the back, Buddy pressed against my side, his presence the only thing grounding me. After what felt like hours, Carter finally spoke. Where exactly are we going? The man in the passenger seat glanced out the window. A facility upstate, remote, shut down a year ago after everything fell apart. And what exactly are we expecting to find there? Reynolds asked. His tone was skeptical, his eyes sharp. The man sighed. Answers. Carter let out a dry chuckle. We've been chasing answers since the moment this started. Excuse me for not getting my hopes up. I get it, the man said, turning slightly to look at me. You don't trust me. You don't trust anything I say. And maybe you shouldn't. But Sarah has to see this for herself. The facility is where it all started. Maybe something there will trigger her memory. I swallowed hard. That was what scared me the most. What if I didn't want to remember? What if whatever I had discovered before was so bad that I had willingly wiped my own memory to escape it? Buddy shifted slightly and nudged my hand. I let my fingers run through his fur, trying to focus on his warmth, rather than the fear building in my chest. The road stretched on, winding deeper into the mountains. The farther we went, the less civilization surrounded us. Trees grew thicker, shadows deeper. It felt like we were driving into a place forgotten by time. And maybe that's exactly what it was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man told Carter to stop. We had reached a narrow dirt path, barely visible under the overgrown vegetation. The air was thick with silence, the kind that made your skin crawl. "This is it," the man said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "We walk from here." Carter cut the engine. No one moved for a long moment. Then, one by one, we stepped out of the vehicle. The night was eerily quiet. No wind, no rustling leaves, just stillness. Buddy was the first to move, padding ahead as if he knew exactly where we were going. I followed him, my footsteps crunching softly against the dirt and fallen leaves. The others trailed behind, their presence solid and steady. The path led us deeper into the woods until the shape of a building loomed in the darkness. It was barely visible at first, its structure hidden by the dense trees. But as we got closer, I saw it. An abandoned facility, half covered in ivy, its windows shattered, its metal doors rusted. A shiver ran down my spine. I knew this place. Even if my mind didn't remember, my body did. My hands clenched into fists, my heartbeat pounded in my ears. The man turned to me. "Anything familiar?" I hesitated. I don't know. "Let's move," Carter said, pulling out his gun. "We don't know what we're walking into." We approached cautiously. Reynolds tried the main door, but it wouldn't budge. Lawson moved to a side entrance, her fingers working fast on the keypad. After a few tense moments, there was a soft click, and the door creaked open. The air inside was stale, thick with dust. The place had been abandoned for some time, but something about it still felt occupied, like we weren't alone. Buddy whined softly, his tail low. He didn't like this place, neither did I. We moved through the corridors, our flashlights illuminating the long-forgotten hallways. Broken monitors hung from the walls, wires dangled from the ceiling. It looked like whoever had been here had left in a hurry. Then we reached a door at the end of the hallway. The man stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "This is it." "What's in there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes shadowed. "The room where you made your choice." A lump formed in my throat. I stepped forward, reaching for the door handle before I could talk myself out of it. My fingers trembled as I pushed it open. The room was small. A desk sat against the far wall, covered in old files and papers. A chair lay overturned in the middle of the room, and on the wall, faded but still legible, were words that sent a shiver through my entire body. "Remember why you ran." I staggered back, my breathing shallow. My head ached, flashes of something barely out of reach flickering in my mind. I pressed a hand to my temple, trying to force the memory to surface. The man watched me carefully. "You wrote that?" I shook my head. No, I don't remember." "You will," he said softly. "It's already coming back, isn't it?" I clenched my fists. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say it was all a mistake, that I was just an ordinary person who had somehow been pulled into something bigger than myself. But I couldn't, because deep down, I knew he was right. Buddy pressed against my leg, grounding me, as my pulse thundered in my ears. The missing pieces were there, just beyond my grasp. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to catch them or let them stay lost forever. I couldn't look away from the words scrawled across the wall. My own handwriting, a message left for myself. My pulse pounded in my ears as I tried to force the memories to the surface, but they danced just beyond my reach, teasing me with their absence. Behind me, Carter and Reynolds scanned the room, their sharp gazes taking in every detail. Lawson had her laptop out again, working quickly to pull any old records from the room's remaining systems. Buddy stayed close, his body pressed against my leg, warm and steady as if sensing the storm raging inside me. The man, the one who claimed to have known me before, watched me carefully. "Does anything come back?" I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "Not enough." He took a step closer. "Then we need to keep going." Carter cut in before I could respond. "Not until we know what we're walking into. This place might be abandoned, but that doesn't mean it's safe." Reynolds nodded, his fingers tightening around his gun. "He's right. If Sarah left herself a message like that, she must have been running from something." The man's expression didn't change. She was. We all were. Something about the way he said it sent another ripple of unease through me. I turned to him. "What happened here?" He hesitated for the briefest moment before speaking. "This facility wasn't just a training ground. It was a research lab. They weren't just teaching handlers and their canines how to work together. They were experimenting on them." My stomach twisted. Experimenting how? His jaw tightened. Enhancements. Behavioral conditioning. Implants. Things that would make the teams more effective, more in sync. Some of it was harmless. Some of it wasn't. A memory flashed, just a fragment. A cold room. Harsh fluorescent light. A voice telling me to focus, to listen, to obey. I gasped, gripping the edge of the desk. Buddy let out a small whine, pressing against me. Carter's hand went to my shoulder. "Sarah?" I forced myself to breathe. I remember something. Just a little." The man, my supposed former teammate, watched me with something like regret. "It'll come back. We just need to find the right triggers." Reynolds shifted impatiently. "We don't have time to let memories surface naturally. We need hard intel." "Lawson?" She shook her head, frustration written all over her face. "Whoever shut this place down scrubbed everything. The systems are fried. I might be able to pull fragments, but it'll take time." Carter cursed under his breath. "Then we search the old-fashioned way." We moved through the facility carefully, checking each room, each corridor. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt. The walls held echoes of something I still couldn't quite grasp, but my body remembered. My hands trembled when I touched certain doors. My breath quickened when I caught faint traces of old antiseptic and metal. Then we reached another room. The door was slightly ajar. Buddy froze before we entered, his ears twitching. Something was inside. Reynolds was the first to move. Gun raised, he pushed the door open, scanning the space. The air inside was colder, and the scent of dust and age filled my nose. Unlike the other rooms, this one wasn't entirely abandoned. A single chair sat in the center, facing a large screen that had been cracked down the middle. Papers littered the floor, and along the wall there were pictures. Pictures of me. I staggered back. "What the hell?" Carter stepped forward, his face darkening. "Someone was watching you." I moved closer, my eyes scanning the images. They weren't just random surveillance shots. Some were from places I didn't remember being. Some were from my supposed normal life, teaching, walking home, living my routine. But others were from this facility. From before. The man beside me clenched his fists. They never stopped tracking you. A chill ran down my spine. Who? Lawson had started flipping through the papers. Whoever was running this project didn't shut it down completely. Someone kept looking for you, Sarah. Someone still is. Buddy let out a soft growl, his fur bristling. Then Reynolds stiffened. We need to leave. Now. Carter turned to him, eyes sharp. What? Reynolds pointed to the corner of the room, where a single red light blinked faintly. A security camera. Still active. I felt the blood drain from my face. They know we're here. No one hesitated. Carter grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit as Reynolds and Lawson moved fast, securing what documents they could. Buddy stayed close, his body tense as we hurried through the corridors. A loud bang echoed through the building. My heart stopped. Gunfire. Move! Carter barked, shoving me forward. The next moments were chaos. Footsteps pounded through the halls. More shots rang out. Reynolds fired back, his expression unreadable, his movements precise. Lawson ducked behind a corner, pulling me with her as Carter and the man who had led us here returned fire. Buddy was growling now, his teeth bared, his body low and ready to strike. They were waiting, Reynolds gritted out. They let us come in. Carter cursed. Then we need to get out. I was shaking, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't just about uncovering my past anymore. Someone wanted to make sure I never remembered. We pushed forward, ducking into a side passage that led back to the entrance. But before we could reach it, a figure stepped into our path. A woman. She was dressed in tactical gear, her gun trained on us, but her expression wasn't aggressive. It was calculating. She tilted her head, her gaze locking onto mine. Hello, Sarah. The familiarity in her voice made my blood run cold. I knew her. Even if I didn't remember how, the woman standing before us was unreadable. Her gun never wavered, her eyes sharp and calculating as they held mine. There was something familiar about her, something that sent a shiver through my entire body. I didn't just recognize her, I felt something deeper, a connection buried under the weight of missing memories. Buddy growled low beside me, his body tense, but he didn't lunge. He was watching her, waiting, just like I was. Who are you? My voice was steady, but my insides were anything but. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something massive, a revelation just beyond my grasp. The woman tilted her head, her lips curving slightly. Not a smile. Something else. Something almost sad. You don't remember, do you? The way she said it made my stomach drop. No, I admitted. But you do. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled, lowering her gun slightly, not enough to be considered a surrender, but enough to show she wasn't here for a fight. I remember everything. Carter and Reynolds didn't relax. Neither did Lawson. The tension in the air was suffocating, a silent standoff no one knew how to break. You were my partner, Sarah, the woman continued, watching me closely for any flicker of recognition. Before you ran. Before they made you forget. My breath caught. My partner? Something in me reacted, an echo of something long forgotten, a flicker of movement, shadows against sterile walls, training sessions, side by side, a name just at the tip of my tongue, but when I tried to grasp it, it slipped away. I swallowed. If I ran, then why are you here now? She studied me for a moment, then said, to stop you from making the same mistake again. I stiffened. What mistake? She glanced toward the others, as if considering how much to say in front of them. When her gaze met mine again, there was something resolute in it. Coming back here, searching for answers you might not want. I shook my head. I didn't have a choice. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. You always had a choice. Something snapped inside me at that. Did I? My voice rose, and I barely noticed that Buddy had pressed closer to my side. Because from what I can tell, I've spent the last however many years being lied to, having my mind wiped, and being dragged into something I don't understand. So no. I don't think I had a choice. She didn't flinch. You did. And you chose to forget. The words hit me harder than I expected. I felt Carter's gaze on me, felt the weight of Reynolds' silent judgment. Even Lawson had stopped typing. The world seemed to slow for a moment, the implications of what she had just said settling deep into my bones. I chose to forget. Not them. Not the people who had erased my past. Me. My fingers clenched at my sides. Why? Her expression softened slightly, but there was still that unreadable edge to it. Because you knew something dangerous. Something that put your life at risk. And instead of running, instead of fighting, you did the only thing you could. I exhaled shakily. I erased it. She nodded. And now you're trying to get it back. Carter cut in then, stepping between us. Enough. If you know something, you need to say it now. Who's after Sarah? Who's still watching this place? The woman's eyes flickered to him, then back to me. It's not just about who's after her. It's about who she used to be. Reynolds exhaled sharply. And who was that? She hesitated. And for the first time, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't expected. Fear. You were the best, she finally said. The best handler they had. But you uncovered something. Something even I wasn't supposed to know. A pulse of something dark ran through me. What was it? She hesitated again, then spoke. That the program wasn't just about training handlers and dogs. It was about creating them. The words didn't make sense at first. I frowned. What do you mean? She let out a slow breath. You weren't just chosen for this program, Sarah. You were made for it. My blood turned to ice. That's not possible. But even as I said it, something inside me trembled. Because it was. Deep down, I knew it was. They didn't just train you. They built you for this, she continued. They shaped your mind, your body, your instincts. And when you started to see the cracks, when you realized what they had done, you ran. But you didn't just run. You wiped yourself clean. You burned every bridge. Because whatever you found out, it wasn't something you could live with. The walls felt like they were closing in. My breath was shallow. I didn't just run, I obliterated my past to keep it buried. Buddy whined, pressing his nose against my hand. I clenched my fingers in his fur, grounding myself. Carter's voice was grim. If this is true, then who's still after her? Who's still watching? She glanced toward the still blinking red light of the security camera. The people who built her. The silence that followed was crushing. Then, from somewhere deep in the facility, a door slammed. We weren't alone. The woman's expression darkened. We have to move. Now! Carter and Reynolds were already in motion, guns raised. Lawson shut her laptop with a snap, shoving it into her bag. I was frozen for half a second, the weight of everything threatening to drag me down. Then Buddy barked, It broke through the haze. I sucked in a breath and forced myself forward. Whoever was coming, I wasn't going to let them take me. Not again. We ran, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the abandoned halls, and behind us, the shadows stirred. The sound of footsteps echoed behind us, too many to count. We tore through the darkened corridors of the facility, the stale air thick with dust and the weight of memories I could almost grasp, but not quite. My breath was ragged, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Buddy was at my side, keeping pace, his body tense and ready. Carter and Reynolds flanked me, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning every shadow. Lawson moved swiftly ahead, her fingers tight around the strap of her laptop bag. And the woman, the one who claimed to be my partner, the one who knew more about me than I did, led the way, her steps sure, her focus unwavering. We reached an intersection. She hesitated only briefly before pointing left. This way. Carter didn't question her. We followed, the walls narrowing, the ceiling pressing lower. The facility was a maze, a forgotten relic of whatever nightmare I had once been a part of. My fingers grazed the cold walls as we ran, searching for something, anything, that might pull the memories free. Then gunfire erupted behind us. Reynolds swore, spinning around, returning fire. The sharp crack of bullets split the silence. I ducked instinctively, my heart lurching into my throat. Buddy barked once, his ears flattened, his body pressed close to me. Carter grabbed my arm, yanking me forward. "Go! Keep moving!" The woman pushed ahead, leading us deeper into the labyrinth of abandoned halls. I couldn't see where we were going, but she moved with purpose. The walls shook as another round of bullets tore through the corridor, chunks of plaster raining down. We turned another corner, and suddenly she stopped. I almost crashed into her. "What? This is it," she said, her voice sharp, urgent. "The exit is just through there." She pointed to a rusted door at the far end of the hall. "But we need time to get it open." Reynolds and Carter took defensive positions immediately, raising their weapons. Lawson crouched near the door, already working on the locking mechanism, her fingers moving fast. The woman turned to me. "We hold them off. Buy her time." I swallowed hard and nodded. My hands clenched into fists. I had no weapon, no training, at least none that I could remember, but I wasn't going to let them take me back. I wasn't going to let them take Buddy. The footsteps grew louder. They were almost on us. Then they came. Black-clad figures stormed into view, their movements precise, mechanical. The first wave opened fire. Carter and Reynolds returned shots, their aim sharp, controlled. The woman moved with them, her motions fluid, like muscle memory she had never lost. I dropped low, pressing Buddy against me, shielding him as best I could. Lawson cursed. "Almost there!" A bullet ricocheted off the wall, too close. Dust filled the air. My lungs burned. The woman pivoted, firing 3 shots in quick succession. One of the figures dropped. Another stumbled, but they kept coming. Buddy snarled. Before I could stop him, he lunged. "Buddy, no!" He moved like a blur, teeth flashing, knocking one of the figures to the ground. They struggled, but Buddy was relentless, his training, his instincts taking over. The woman fired again, covering him, covering us. "Got it!" Lawson yelled. The door creaked open. Carter didn't hesitate. "Go! Move!" We scrambled through. Reynolds fired one last shot before slamming the door shut behind us. "That won't hold them long." The woman didn't stop moving. "We're not safe yet." I followed, gripping Buddy's collar, forcing him forward. He was breathing hard, his fur damp with sweat, but he didn't resist. He stayed with me. Always. We emerged outside. The night air was cold, sharp, filling my lungs like fire. A clearing stretched before us, and beyond it, a vehicle. Carter tossed me the keys. "Drive." I caught them with trembling fingers. "What? We'll cover you." His tone left no room for argument. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw the door open, Buddy leaping in beside me. Lawson climbed into the passenger seat, her hand still gripping her laptop like it was her lifeline. The woman jumped into the back. Carter and Reynolds were the last to pile in, gunfire ringing behind them as they slammed the doors shut. "Go!" I hit the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement as we tore away from the facility. My hands were shaking, my vision blurred, but I didn't slow down. The world outside blurred past us, a dizzying mix of trees and darkness, and the headlights cutting through it all. No one spoke. The only sound was the roar of the engine, the heavy breathing filling the car, the distant echo of what we had just escaped. Then, finally, Carter exhaled. "We need to lay low." Reynolds nodded, his jaw tight. "They won't stop looking." I stared straight ahead, my grip on the wheel unrelenting. My chest was still heaving, my thoughts tangled. "I need to know everything," I said, my voice hoarse. "No more secrets." The woman met my gaze in the rearview mirror. There was no hesitation this time. "You deserve the truth." I swallowed. The weight of the night pressed heavy against my skin, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been running from my past for too long. Now it was time to face it.